here for my Booktuber Favorites TBR. This is a list of books that I have compiled based on watching different booktubers' favorite books of 2020 videos. Those are just some of my favorite videos to watch. And I have picked a selection of books here and really am excited to read these throughout the course of the year. So without further ado, the first is from Adam from Memento Mori's favorites, which he is not currently active on Booktube, but he does, post regularly on Bookstagram. And he posted one of his. It's a book by Betty MacDonald. It's the sequel to The Egg and I, and it is her memoir. Betty MacDonald I knew from the Miss Pigglewiggle books, which I loved growing up. I still love them now. But the first one is The Egg and I, so I thought I would kind of do a little bit of a hack that even though this wasn't technically on his list, the next one in the series was. But I'm really curious to read this and kind of see what her life was like. I'm pretty sure she was a farmer's wife, so there will be some interesting stories there. And this is one I have ordered myself a physical copy of. So I'm looking forward to arriving in the mail, hopefully any day now. And the next one is Carolyn from Carolyn Marie Reads. And this is one I had actually found in a little free library. When she talked about it earlier this year, she made me really want to read it, and it is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is not my usual kind of a pick. It is literary fiction, and it is like a modern love story. So I am curious if I will like it, but because Carolyn loves classics so much, so I feel like she has kind of a very curated taste in books that I can kind of rely more on a recommendation from her. As a classics reader, she might have tastes similar to mine in more modern books. So we will see. I know this is about, they're at school, Connell and Marianne, and have this kind of unusual relationship, and then they go to college in Dublin. So I'm curious what I will think of it, because it made the rounds a couple years ago on Booktube, and I never like to read those books when they're making the rounds. I just feel too scared that I won't like it, so I wait for the dust to settle. Then third on the list is Olive from a Book Olive. On her list was To Have and to Hoax, and this was her favorite romance book from the year, and she reads a romance book a month, so it's really fun because before it wasn't her typical wheelhouse of reading, so it's really exciting to see kind of her best of the best, and that was To Have and to Hoax. And just because it has romance in it and the fabulous cover, I most definitely will be reading this over the month of February. And it is about this couple that were married and I think just kind of grew disgusted with one another once they had lived together for a substantial amount of time. And she receives a letter from him once they aren't living together anymore. She receives a letter from him and it says he's injured. And she goes to see him and he's perfectly fine and he's drinking in a pub. And she has no idea why he sent her the letter then. And he has no idea why she's there. So then she decides to feign an illness. So I think there's going to be a lot of kind of humor in this. And then I think it could be really sweet to see this couple that fell out of love hopefully fall back in love again. So I'm really excited for that one. And then Petra from the channel Petra U. One of the ones that she had on her list was from Juliet Marillier's Seven Waters trilogy, which I think is actually more than 3 books. It started out as a trilogy, if I'm remembering correctly. But I have not read any of those, and Petra's really made me want to try Juliet Marillier. I did read Heart's Blood a few years ago. I didn't love it, but Petra has just talked up the Seven Waters trilogy so much. She makes it sound so good. So I will be trying out Daughter of the Forest. And next is Katie from Life Between Words, and Katie's list was so convincing that I have 2 from her list to add to here. First is Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth. This is an epistolary middle grade novel about an old recluse named Mr. Marsworth who stays in his house all the time. And he starts receiving letters from the main character, the little girl whose name escapes me right now. And it's their letters that they write back and forth together. And it ended up on Katie's favorites list. I do find epistolary novels are really easy to just read a letter here and there. put it down, step away from it, and pick it back up later on when you have the time. And I'm really excited for that one. And the other one that I have added from Katie's list, that it has been, it's taken a long time for me to be interested in reading this book. And it is A Gentleman in Miscow by Amor Towles. The title and the cover were both always just made me think the book was going to be very dull. I didn't really even know anything about it, but just every time I saw the cover, nothing drew me in. But it is Katie's absolute favorite book of the year. She read it twice last year, basically back to back. And it's about a man who is on house arrest at a hotel in Moscow. And it's just supposed to be a really wonderful book. So that premise, it could really be dull, but it seems like Amor Towles is a skilled enough writer that it is an amazing book. So I am excited to get to this one. And then we come to Emma, the Bookish princess, and I knew that Emma was going to have at least one book on her list that I would want to read. And so you would have seen in my book haul recently that The Castle on the Hill by Elizabeth Goudge is the one that I will be picking. And I mean, I'm so excited to pick this up. And this is, it says the summer of 1940, the darkest days of the Second World War approach, and Miss Brown becomes housekeeper at a castle. So I love the sound of that. And it's home to a lonely historian, Mr. Burley, and his nephews, and fighter pilot Richard, and fair peace-loving Stephen. So yes, looking forward to getting to this one. Just Elizabeth Goudge, I want to read all of her books eventually. So this is on my list. And next is Tanya from The Sampler Girl. She had two on her list that I just had to put them on. And the first one is The Woman in the Polar Night. And I'm realizing, I know that a woman travels to a very cold location and lives there, but I can't remember what the cold location is. I don't know if it's Alaska or, even more isolated. I'm not sure. But Tanya just made it sound so good and so appealing that I really wanted to read it. And then The Magical Language of Others. This is a book about family and a mother-daughter relationship, writing back and forth to each other while they live in different countries. It sounds really beautiful. I'm pretty sure it's a translated work, which is something I would like to read more translated books in the upcoming years, and sounds really wonderful. Next is Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf, and I was already intrigued by this book, and then it ended up being Naomi's favorite book of the year, and I have it currently from the library, so hopefully I will be reading this month. And that is The Haunting at Bonaventure Circus by Jamie Jo Wright. This is a thriller mystery of sorts, and it takes place at a circus, which I love the idea of that. But the element about this that especially attracted me to this is that the author, Jamie Jo Wright, has Lyme's disease. And her main character that she has in here has Lyme's disease, but she's also an investigator, an inspector. And so I think it's really cool to see chronic illness representation in a book like this. And I think pretty much the main symptom that, this character experiences is fatigue. And that's pretty much my main symptom that I experience with my chronic illness. So yeah, very intrigued and curious. And I'm looking forward to picking this up, like I said, hopefully this month, because I had to wait, for a little while. I was on hold for this. So I assume there's going to be holds on it after me. So I need to get on it and read it. Then next on the list is, I picked 3 from Katie from Books and Things list. She made them all sound so good. So first is The Romance of a Shop. This is a Victorian book, so I think I will be saving this for October. And it is about a group of sisters, and I'm pretty sure they open a shop together, but I just love the notion of getting to see the relationships between the sisters. That kind of setup really appeals to me. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. And next is Passing by Nella Larsen. There are several of these kind of early 20th century classics by people of color that I'm feeling really drawn to reading. And this first one is about 2 sisters, and one of them chooses to pass for white while the other one lives as a Black woman, and kind of how their lives are different because of that. It sounds really interesting, and I've just heard only wonderful things about it. And then The Color Purple. So this is another one in that same category. I really want to read it. I just hear so many good things. It just sounds so moving, and just a really, really important book to be reading. And then Miss Austen by Gill Hornby. So I added 4 from Katie's list. And this is about the relationship between Cassandra and Jane Austen, sort of the author's take on what their relationship would have been like. Now, I have to say that since I put this on the list and since I got around to actually filming this, I have read Miss Austen and I loved it so much. I really was just feeling craving like Jane Austen-esque things. And this really hit the mark. It was so cozy and the language felt so similar to Jane Austen's writing herself. I can't recommend it enough if you want some sort of really good Jane Austen fan fiction. And the last booktuber that I have added 2 from their favorites list is Marissa from Blatantly Bookish. So speaking of, early 20th century classics by people of color, their eyes were watching God. I have not read any Zora Neale Hurston, but I've had a couple people say, Kate, I really think you would like her. So it is about time. I'm going to read her, and this is, on the list, and I'm really excited to get to this book. And then lastly, speaking of wanting Jane Austen-esque things, The Other Bennet Sister. I have finally been convinced that this is a book I will love. Once you hear enough readers with similar taste to you and taste that you trust loving it, you go for it. So I really love the notion of getting to know a lesser known Bennet sister. So those are the books on my Booktuber Favorites TBR. I'm excited for the variety that is there in them and to read them throughout the year. Let me know if you were planning on reading any of those, and I will be back for another video soon. Bye.